All right, we are live. Welcome everybody to Brain Milk. People are gonna be trickling in. Adrian, how you doing?
Doing
What's
good. How
going
are you?
on? Great. A lot of good politics going on today, or this week rather. We got some people checking in, like 18, 19 so far. Thanks for checking into Brain Milk. We talk politics with 2% fat. Feel free to drop in any questions that you have during our talk. We'll maybe try to get to them. I know we kind of rant a lot. And sometimes we don't let each other talk. But if you got a question, we'll check it over. Um, I think first up on my list, I wanted to talk about what do you think about Nick Fuentes having a moment? He's in the
You
news a lot.
you always start with
Yeah,
a
go
deep
ahead.
cut, and I mean, I have I did not know what you were writing about him. That he lives with his parents, never slept with a woman, but hates women. Rumors
Do you
that
know who he is? Do you know who Nick
he's
Fuentes is?
I know he's like a white nationalist, right?
Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
anti-Semitic. There were like rumors that he was like in a gay sex tape with that streamer Destiny. Do you remember him? Oh shit.
I know who
So
Destiny is.
yeah,
I'm
people.
not familiar with the gay sex tape.
There's a lot of rumors right now, actually, about a lot of like big conservative podcasters being gay. There were rumors that Charlie Kirk was gay. He had an affair with Candace Owens. That guy Johnny, what's his name?
He did have an
There's
affair,
another.
or that's just like rumored or whatever.
Just rumors. I don't know.
Oh,
But I mean, a lot of people were bringing up the Nick Fuentes thing because they're like, he said he's never had sex with a woman, so people have been calling him a virgin, and people are like, well, just because he hasn't had sex with a woman doesn't mean he's a virgin. Shit, I got the hiccups. Sorry. Uh, so friends with Tucker Carlson, who's having a lot of good things going on, I guess, in his life now that he's being kind of rehabilitated. He's going on all these podcasts and shit, man. My friend gave me one of these Zen things, and they're not a sponsor or anything, but that's why I got the hiccups. A little bit of a little rush. But Laura Loomer's also feuding with Tucker Carlson, so there's a big divide in the Republican Party. And then, weirdly enough, Roger Stone threatened to reveal who is paying for Laura Loomer's career, I guess. So, what do you make of the kind of civil warring in the Republican Party between like the hardcore anti-Semites and the conspiracists versus maybe just the normie Republicans who aren't so rabidly partisan and
well, I think it's funny because
like bigoted?
all of them accusing each other of being like paid agents for other countries. I imagine that like after Trump is gone and they do a little investigation, there's probably a lot of money being spent on these people coming from other countries, and I bet a lot of them are well, I don't know what the term is, but paid agents for other countries that they don't disclose properly as they should. I think there are a lot of stories like during the campaign before the election that people like Jason Miller, wasn't he didn't he have like a fake consulting firm where companies were just giving him like hundreds of
Like
thousands of
30 grand a
dollars?
month or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's just shocking. And like at that point, I don't know. I mean,
Tim
there's
Pool
so
had to shut
much.
down his podcast because I guess he was shutting down or selling it, but now he's like not making that much money, and he's like a reporter, like at the White House in some capacity. But he doesn't have as much money now that he's not getting that like 30,000 or whatever a month from the Russian government. I guess that was funding that.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad they stopped, but I don't know. I hope that if the Democrats could control, one of the things I think they should do is just investigate every little bit of fraud and just corruption and all illegal dealings and stuff. Because I think there's probably a lot of people who have a lot of sway with Trump and the people around him, or the
Yeah.
people who are around him, just cashing out and just taking tons of money. And I think it's horrible.
Well, are you worried that there's too much fraud that you can't really do that? Just there's not enough people in the government, or there's not enough paid lawyers with not enough time in the day to really go after all this fraud, especially because they bury it all in like shell corporations and stuff like that. And now everything with crypto is like even more untraceable.
Well,
Do
I
you think it'll
imagine
be
that
the kind of thing?
even if a lot of it's in crypto, they're obviously going to take the money out and buy things. They're going to move money around. There's going to be stuff in and out of bank accounts. So even if some of it's untraceable, I think you can probably get a good picture. And that's one of the things like, oh, there's so much fraud. That's like the kind of thing that always annoys me. People talk about like, oh, there's not enough immigration lawyers to go. That was like one of the complaints about
Hmm.
Biden. It's like, why does everyone have to wait 2 years just to get a hearing on their immigration status? And, when you're in charge of the federal government that employs 5 million people, can't you hire like 1,000 more people to work
Well, doesn't Congress have
everywhere?
to vote on that? And isn't that the
Yeah.
problem? That Congress just says, fuck that, we're not doing that. We're not giving any money for this. And, famously, they can't come to any bipartisan agreement on immigration. And, that's
Oh,
what Obama wanted to do in
yeah.
2014. And then the Gang of Eight, the four Republicans, all voted against their own bill that they spent months crafting.
No, I mean, I'm just thinking like in 2029, if like Democrats win control of Congress and,
Oh, like that
presumably
should
have
be a
the White House,
priority.
like, yeah, like if you get to the point where, well,
Mhm.
the hopefully the Attorney General in 2029 has like a pair of balls or whatever. But, if he says like, oh, there's so much corruption, we can't actually go after it, then hire 500 more lawyers to go after it. Like, it's the federal government. We have a million people in the army just standing around, like, a lot of them in barracks here stateside, a lot of them not doing a whole
Yeah,
lot. Like,
yeah,
the amount of, and that's
you're
not to
right.
say anything about the military, it's just the amount of people the federal government employs. The same thing with immigration, right? If we're going to have a more humane immigration system, we'll probably need more immigration lawyers and
Yeah,
attorneys and judges and stuff. Just freaking hire them. It's like a drop in the bucket, you know?
yeah, that's
It would be
something
way
that
cheaper
Democrats.
than, oh,
Yeah,
what?
that should be something that Democrats like put on the list now of things that they need to do immediately. And that would even be a great wedge issue. Republicans are soft on immigration; they don't want more lawyers. They're resisting the funding of more lawyers to get these immigrants processed faster, and then potentially out of the country faster if they don't meet the requirements of the refugee process and all the changes Trump has made.
Yeah, and if they like if they created Doge out of nothing and just started hiring people for that, why can't you hire people for existing authorities given by Congress for existing
Yeah.
departments of the federal government? But
And Democrats should also do a Doge for ICE. Like the first thing they do, like day one, just have a Doge wrecking ball go through ICE and go through all the funding that Trump is just giving them. And, I think, do you think Democrats should be almost like vindictive in the
no,
way
they should. Yeah,
they kind of fight
yeah.
back against this?
Just go. I mean, in 2029, like for all we know, Doge might still be in existence with some people working it. Like Democrats should be like, yeah, well, Doge, we want Doge, we want our turn. We're in a
Yeah.
Doge government too. We're in a Doge it better.
I saw earlier today, Elon, I said it in some interview or something. He said the Doge was not totally successful. Yeah, he'll always say that there were some good things. He'll never admit that like it was just a clusterfuck and just a giant waste of taxpayer money that like costs money because of everything that they did, just firing people that then had to be reinstated with like back pay. Like everything they did was so destructive and definitely wasted more money. And like there are the issues of those giant stockpiles of food for USAID that they had to like destroy, right? Because it just was all it was all expiring. But anyway, let's talk. Anything else to add
No,
to
I
that?
mean, I don't know. I mean, the what they did was so destructive too, and I think really problematic for. I don't know. I was just reading the national security document that they just released. I don't know if you did you look at
I
that at
think
all?
you showed
Did you
that,
have that?
yeah, to
Yeah,
me.
I don't know if you wanted to talk about it at all, but like just talking about how they mentioned soft power in it multiple times. It says America's like soft power is so great, but at the same time, like Doge basically destroying American programs that give free food to hungry people. It's like, how
Yeah,
does
and
that
save
not?
like tens of
Yeah,
thousands of lives a year in
yeah.
all these countries.
And that was just like one little part of it. There was a lot of stuff in there, but there's a lot of hypocritical things, and it's funny. Like, oh, we're making America great again. And it's like maybe I'm a liberal, but I thought America was great when we were feeding people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I thought
Joe
we also
Scar.
had a little bit more of a Christian government too when we were doing that.
Yeah, yeah. Joe Scarborough always talked about how, like, especially before the election, he would make the comment that, like, no country has fed more people and released more people from tyranny than the United States. And they're like, nope, we're
Yeah.
not going to do that anymore. But our soft power is so great. And it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Speaking of power, we can switch to Ukraine. It's interesting. I thought about this a lot. That Trump is somehow managing to screw over both Ukraine and Russia because he's like so indecisive, and he won't do a deal. Like because basically he lets like Jared Kushner and Steve Wickoff go off and make some deal that's like basically doing land and resource agreements on the back end with Russia. So entirely screwing over Ukraine. Meanwhile, the State Department is doing like the regular, order of operations on this deal and kind of making a deal. And like Marco Rubio is working with that. And there's actually a little bit of a rivalry between Rubio and Vance already. They're kind of apparently like backstabbing each other a little bit, especially in regards to Ukraine. And that's more angling for like future 2028 runs. Obviously, JD Vance doesn't like Ukraine. He hates Zelensky. He's trying to like torpedo the talks by himself. Marco Rubio, doing the State Department thing, and Marco Rubio not being like a total moron about like America's national security interests, like knows that funding Ukraine now is way better than having to fight Russia and Poland after they've like, forced all the Ukrainians into the Russian army to just keep moving. What do you make of that? Do you think that's going to be a big dividing like wedge issue in the Republican primary in 2028? Like, I guess as long as what if the war's still going on, if Ukraine can still hold out?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it'll be weird because Ukraine still has a majority support from the American people. Like I've seen polls that show that most people still supporting Ukraine. So what
Hmm.
is it going to be like when they're all fighting for the Republican nomination and trying to be one up each other in the MAGAverse, but then also try to get Trump to support them, and then can't say anything negative about what Trump did? But I think it's funny because like
Yeah.
there were so many Republicans who were criticizing Biden, saying, "Oh, he should have done this more quicker. He should have done this. He should have given them every. Why are we holding one hand behind their back?" And it's like I don't know how they like. Well, there's a obvious cognitive dissonance and all kinds of stuff on that, especially in the MAGA right. But yeah, I think it's horrible. It is kind of funny because I've heard people talk about how like, oh, what's the deal? Like Witkoff is just coaching the Russians on how to talk to Trump and liquor him up. And
Yeah.
it's like on the one hand, it's like yes, diplomacy is often between very small amounts of people. Diplomats are professionals. They they're coming to agreements and trying to find a way to make agreements with people who don't agree on stuff. But then it's like, well, I kind of disagree with that because I don't think you can defend that because like I think the State Department would be a little involved, and like Marco Rubio literally didn't know about that 28-point plan.
Right.
Apparently, like from what I was seeing like open source or whatever, it's like Marco Rubio said that's not the plan, and then had to be like, "Yep, that's the plan." After
Right.
people told him, and it's like, well, so obviously the left hand of the government doesn't know what the right hand's doing, which is par for the course for this government. But yeah, I don't know. It's a
What?
cluster.
Yeah. What do you make of Jared Kushner being involved? Him having no official government role, and I guess like everything he's doing is with like kind of blood money from the Saudis, and then like the Qataris, and the UAE people. I
Well,
don't
it's
even,
funny
what do you
because
call a
like
person from UAE?
yeah, well, it's funny because like there have been other times in American history where like I don't know, people who used to be presidents like Jimmy Carter would just go places and talk to people and try to
Yeah.
make but like at least his heart was in the right place. Jared Kushner, I think you can probably guarantee is just finding a way to make money. Like everyone's talking about how Witkoff's kids are like running around Europe or something or his
Yeah,
son
and
and
they're
his
doing
like
crypto dealings with like
yeah,
Donald Jr. and Eric.
yeah. Like what bullshit. Like there used to be a time when who was it? McNamara ran the Defense Department in like the Kennedy administration. Like he willingly took a pay cut to go be Secretary of Defense. I don't think people feel that way
Yeah.
anymore. Like they're just in out, they don't care about public service, they don't care about the American people. They're like, I'm gonna make American policy be what makes me more money, and I think that's horrible.
Yeah, right. That's pretty rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, with I kind of want to staying on the topic of Ukraine. I was listening to a video by that guy Peter Zihan. He's kind of an interesting guy. He's very opinionated, and
Very.
but he was talking about how he's extremely bearish on Russia, and that Russia's military is kind of a paper tiger right now. They're gaining inches per day based off of like thousands of Russians dying, and so Peter's kind of idea is that Russia's like last chance for any kind of long-term relevancy is basically taking Ukraine and absorbing that like 37 million person population and having more territory and having like a wider front against like NATO countries if they can take and absorb all that Ukrainian land. Um, but like Russia's kind of falling apart. The amount of Russians, it's like 1.2 million Russians have been like maimed or killed in this war. Who knows how many total like brain drain people like left the country.
I think it's
And
like a million and a half, 2 million people fled.
yeah, but so, and I kind of had this thought, like it sucks for Ukraine that so many Ukrainians are dying right now because America and Europe are not just like totally committing and just giving the money and the weapons and everything that is required to win. But like long term, in a kind of dark anti-Ukrainian way, like it's kind of like we're just draining Russia completely. So like in long term, I guess that's like for everything Trump could do, selling out Ukraine and just walking away right now and just taking away all of our communications and our like
Intel sharing.
satellite intelligence, yeah, intel sharing. Like things could be worse for Ukraine, but Trump is, like I said, he's managing to screw over both Putin and Zelensky by just not making a choice. And I guess that's still better for America than Trump just walking away and letting Russia absorb Ukraine or nuke Kiev or something like that. Like, what do you make of all that?
Well, that was a lot, but I think yeah, it's weird. On the one hand, I feel like Trump just likes autocrats. It's easier for him to get along. He can understand it better, like the idea of like wanting to wield power. I think he has a, and this goes into like the criticism of the national security strategy they released, but it's just like uh, a weird view of Europe that like Europe is somehow killing itself and Europe is just bad and they're DEI and woke. And so like all these other countries that have, are democracies and have every freaking right to govern themselves however they wish. And like
Yeah.
he does not like them. So I think that's like a lot of that where he's got to go to these meetings and like he's surrounded by a lot of people who probably think America ought to be the good guys. And I don't think that like really moves him or drives him to want to do what most people might think would be the moral or ethical thing in this particular situation.
Yeah.
I think like all there are a lot of arguments made about whether NATO somehow made Putin do this. I mean, they're all dumb arguments, or there's no basis to it. Trump or Putin just wanted to invade Ukraine because he thought it would be easy to take the whole country. But yeah, I mean, it's weird. I kind of forgot what your question was, but what do I make of it? Like, I don't
Well,
know.
I mean, how
It is
like yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say like on the what to make of it for Ukraine. Like it obviously sucks that Ukrainians have to fight. I think they are defending their country pretty well. I don't think Russia can reasonably expect to take like most of the country, let alone significantly more than they already are doing. Like a lot of their big gains comes from at some point the Ukrainians start to get surrounded, so they just fall back to the next defensive position, right? And so
Hmm.
while it looks like, and the media makes a big case of, oh, they lost this much land, the reality is like, well, they went from one defended place or one destroyed village or city or whatever, and now they're falling back further than you. They're not like just walking back slowly, right? They have to go to a new position. So,
Right.
and then what's in the wake of that? 20,000 dead Russian soldiers or wounded soldiers. So, yeah, I don't know. It sucks that the best thing for everybody would for this, including Russia, would be for the war to end tomorrow, right? But
That's the
in some
thing.
ways,
It seems like the best thing for Russia. Like right now, Ukraine, I looked it up. They've basically methodically been attacking like 40% of Russia's refining capacity is gone.
mhm,
And even like the land deal that they're trying to do with Wickoff and Jared Kushner, like first off, a lot of that land is now ruined and filled with like all the cords and wires for their drones to not, the
in
wired
mind,
drones. Yeah, and it's mined and all this like unexploded ordnance, obviously. And so the land is not that valuable. And then Russia itself does not have the capacity to get the minerals. Like there are some like lithium and heavy metals and like valuable resources in a lot of that territory in eastern Ukraine. But Russia does not have the capacity to build that. So it needs like American companies, which is kind of what Wickoff and Kushner are working with. But they don't have the capacity. And like with tariffs kind of choking out their economy, they really barely even have like probably heavy machinery for that anymore. And like obviously the entire Russian economy has like largely been converted to a wartime economy. So like now it's kind of a bad thing for Putin to end the war because then there'll be all this like misaligned economic capacity that is basically just for war, and so they're kind of bribing the people with all these payments for all the families whose are their kids and husbands and like brothers die in the meat grinder war. But it just seems terrible. And kind of going with that Peter Zeihan remark, Russia was already suffering demographically, and now his thing was basically he was saying by like 2050 to 2070, like Russia might be like just terminal decline. Like they'll have so many people, like such a low birth rate, so many people in poverty, so many young men just gone from all of these communities that things look terrible for Russia.
yeah. I mean, to some extent, I think some of Peter Zeihan's it's a little exaggerated, but like I
Yeah,
think at
he's very
some point,
opinionated.
yeah,
But it's
like at some
interesting.
point,
He goes through a lot of like graphs on like, import, exports, resource needs, scarcity, things like that.
yeah, I think that's one of those weird things. Is like societies get older if they really cared and they really wanted people to have children. I think like a country like Russia, which gets billions of dollars a day selling fossil fuels and stuff, like they could literally just give every family who has a kid or two kids or three kids like 100K, right? And just keep it's funny because people say, oh, like there really aren't policies that seem to make people want to have more kids, which is kind of funny. And like I don't personally care, but like usually like the subsidies are like, oh, we'll give you $300 a month if you have a kid. You're like, that's
Hmm.
I don't think that really cuts it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think Russia as a country is going to go anywhere. Like, people talk about South Korea. Oh, in 75 years there'll be like three South Koreans left. Like I don't know if that's literally true. And people have a way of just playing with numbers and extrapolating statistics probably further than they need to go.
Yeah, but
But
you look at the birth rates and the number of countries like Russia's population now is going heavy, skewing older. South Korea and
yeah,
Japan are other ones with like demographic issues that that don't have the same kind of cultural affinity for immigration like America does. Like America's kind of thriving in terms of population. Our birth rate is not totally plummeting, and
Ironically, because of
especially
immigration, right? That's like
yeah.
the big rub.
Well, that definitely helps. Yeah. And I think kind of going back to your statement about like why Republicans really hate Russia right now is like they kind of like Russia, you know, they like Europe as a lot of like European countries where all of us are like, you know, pretty much from. But as long as those countries stay white, so like the JD Vance interpretation of foreign policy is like, why do we care about Europe if all these European countries are ruining themselves by taking in all these immigrants from like North Africa, the Middle East, Turkey, you know, etc. But it is kind of an interesting thing when you have to blend foreign policy with these people's like you know, like bigoted opinions on certain groups of people.
Well, it's kind of stupid anyway, because like, did you ever read that book by Hobson from 1905? Who he this early political scientist who pointed out that the British Empire made no money and it was losing the government money, and the entirety of British welfare would have been better off just giving minimum wage to poor people in England
Hmm.
rather than have all of the colonies and stuff. And it's a really interesting book. But that kind of goes to the criticism and complaints against Europe that they're woke and they're like little bitches or whatever. And it's like, it's so stupid because these people like look back and they're like, oh, look at France. It used to have this giant empire. And it's like, yeah, that was pretty bad. The French did a
Yeah,
lot of bad things in
it
a
didn't
lot of
work
bad
well for
places.
France, really.
Yeah. And it did. Yeah. They were going to lose the empire. It was inevitable. They weren't making money. Like no empire made money from the empire. You know, you just
Yeah.
have soldiers stationed all over the world,
Especially
you know.
post World War II, where everybody wanted their independence. It was kind of just like a worldwide trend where every colonial power was having revolts, rebellions, all kinds of resistance movements,
Yeah.
and just, you know, even just peaceful resistance that like really made them look like psychopaths.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, Germany, the UK could be great again without an empire. You know,
Right.
Germany doesn't need to start a World War every 20 years, you know, to be great. I mean,
Right.
it's so stupid. So I don't know. It's weird. It's like a cultural chauvinism because like you're right that that's where Western civilization, Western culture comes from. And like, well, they're like, well, we don't like these DEI woke bitches. So now we have to
Yeah.
like remove them from everything we like and then
Right.
hold that up and say, oh, why can't you be like that anymore? But
And it's dumb from an American perspective because, you know, everyone talks about our hegemony and we're this evil colonial superpower, but that level of power only works when we have the, 450 million Europeans added to our, 350 million American population. When you're competing with, you know, China and India, which have half the entire world's population, you know, like a quarter each of them. So long term, like for our geopolitical goals, it helps to have so many Europeans on our side, especially very developed modernized European, specifically Western Europe countries that you know, are actually valuable allies and have very sophisticated military capabilities and hardware, and of course, just like an educated modern population that largely speaks English and consumes American culture. Like all these things are so good for America. So cleaving this divide is, first off, it's like exactly what Vladimir Putin wanted, right? Like of all of his goals of going into Ukraine, the only one that he's really accomplished is just dividing America and Europe and kind of cleaving that NATO partnership, you know?
well, I got one for you, and I think this is kind of interesting. I heard this the other day, and I've thought a little bit about it, but I would like to learn more. But just the idea that like European economic malaise, I guess you could say, or just the fact that they haven't had the same amount of growth as us in the last 20 years or so, is actually probably more due to something which, you know, Republicans and MAGA people point out that European companies and countries have way too many regulations they have to abide by. And in some ways, it's kind of like a funny thing that Europeans made a bet that like using positive regulations to protect the environment and people's health would be something that if they kind of led the way on, other countries would follow suit. Like, you know, a lot of people make fun of countries like Germany that doesn't get a ton of sunshine for trying to be super pro solar. But like, isn't that kind of the right thing to do? Like renewable, cheap energy. Like at least they're trying to do something positive. Like the whole fact that their legal system is based on companies can should not be doing things that aren't proven safe before they do it. Like in America, a company
Yeah.
can make a chemical and put it in the market, and 20 years later, you go, "Hey, I think that causes cancer," and they're like, "Our bad." And Europeans are like,
Yeah.
"Oh, well," you're like, "Maybe you shouldn't do that until you do positively prove that it's not, you know, causing
Right.
cancer." So in some ways, they were saying that like this economic malaise that people accuse the Europeans of like being horrible and eliminate, you know, being woke DEI people is really just they made a bet that if they led the way on positive regulations that protected people, other countries would follow suit. And it was a bad bet because they didn't know America would be like, fuck that. Let's keep pumping
Yeah.
oil. Let's keep throwing
Yeah.
chemicals in the Susquehanna River. Like, yeah, I don't know. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. In terms of Ukraine, though, do you think Zelensky should just give Donald Trump a giant trophy, a giant
Oh yeah,
Ukrainian Peace Prize?
yeah. Call it
Like,
the like
greatest president ever.
yeah
Call it
the
the Better
Ukraine.
than Lincoln, Washington, and Jefferson combined award and give it
Yeah,
to Donald Trump in a big ceremony.
yeah. Call it the Ukrainian Medal of Honor or something. Just
Yeah.
yeah,
A Medal of Honor, Peace, and
yeah.
then billionaires or something. Yeah.
Global peace and yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Do you think the Trump administration is worried about Vladimir Putin using nukes in Ukraine the same way that Biden was? You know, Biden really slow walked giving Ukraine a lot of resources and military arms and weapons. And part of it had to do with supply chains. You know, they didn't want to just give technology to Ukraine that they'd immediately get smashed and destroyed or not have the, maintenance schedules and capacity to fix things and repair things and keep, the supply chains going. But, like, do you think Putin that's not even an option for Trump to worry about, like the nuclear thing, just attacking Ukraine, or is Putin just trying to take the territory he already has? And then I guess you can also comment on, like, do you think Biden was like too cautious for all of this? Should we have just done more at the beginning and just kind of called Russia's bluff and be like, you're not going to nuke Ukraine, or if you do, we will just destroy your entire front line with like a bunch of NATO sorties in one day or something?
Well, I don't know a whole lot about that. I like, and well, I don't know a lot about the thing I'm going to say. Is I remember reading some news stories about how early on in the war there was one point when some of the first counterattacks from Ukraine that they had basically trapped like 30,000 Russian soldiers like with their backs to a river, and they were going to try to go in for the kill and basically wipe out a pretty sizable percentage of the total troops
Hmm.
there in the Ukrainian sector, or at least physically in Ukraine. And so I think that they basically the Russians knew their soldiers were fucked and the Ukrainians were coming for them. And from what I heard, and this is like obviously just something that some I don't know whether it's Twitter or some random website reported on, but they said that Putin was saying that we're going to nuke the Ukrainians. We're not going to lose 30,000 soldiers in a week. Like we're not allowing that to happen. And from
Hmm.
at least that reporting was that that was when the Russians were saying we will use nukes, and they were there was a obvious commitment to protecting 30,000 soldiers and not having an embarrassing defeat and a rout. Essentially, would be what that was, and I think to that specific time and place and situation or circumstance, probably the likelihood or like possibility of using a tactical nuke was probably likely. I don't know if Russia now would be willing to use it. I think the way the uh, the battle lines are with like the trenches and stuff, where like you hear stories about how like soldiers are like walking for like 3 days just to get to the front line. So it kind of begs
Yeah.
the question of like, what would you nuke and why? And if it's like just
Hmm.
a city where there happen to be like, I don't know, 10,000 soldiers around or something, like you're going to nuke a, mostly civilian city in Ukraine, not next to the front line. And like, I don't know how that would help. It would certainly make the rest of Europe pretty pissed. I think, that would probably really change the calculations for a lot of Europeans, especially since like there are Europeans with nukes, specifically
Right.
Britain and France. And Britain of all countries has been supporting Ukraine a lot. And now Britain and France are talking about possibly, you know, extending their nuclear security umbrella to more of Europe, or
Right.
at least NATO, partially on fears that, America might not be there, which is
Yeah.
horrible and sad. But, that's just where they are. So I think it's unlikely that they would use a nuke. I don't know what it would be used for. And I think it would probably, like, if you're going to use a nuke to scare the Ukrainians to basically keep your entire like army in one sector from being like wiped out, I mean, that makes a little more sense to me. I don't know what the reasoning would be now.
Yeah. That's true. Um, let's see. Moving on to Venezuela, another kind of war brewing. Um, there's an interesting deal that got reported that they were talking about, like Maduro was maybe willing to leave the country if he could keep, I think, $200 million and stay somewhere in the Western Hemisphere, which was like a deal breaker for the Trump administration, who I guess are trying to work out some way for him to go to Russia or China or Qatar, I
Russia.
guess has been. Yeah. Because, I think Russia's been, supporting the Maduro, regime a little bit, and maybe China too, with some, deals that they got going on. But do you think Do you think that's a good idea? Is that good for foreign policy? Is that real politic of just letting Maduro leave the country, and then we don't have to go into a giant bombing thing, kill a bunch of Venezuelans? We don't have to invade the actual land, get involved in like some protracted guerrilla war or something. Like, would that be good if we just make some like blazingly corrupt deal to just let Maduro walk away with like $200 million and live in Qatar or something? Would you take that
Well,
deal?
I mean, I would. That goes back to like, oh, would you give Saddam Hussein $2 billion to get the fuck out of Iraq in 2002? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
probably that would have been better off. I don't know. It's weird. That goes back to the classic like internationalist, liberal, uh, uh, isolationist part of American foreign policy, right? Like, do we give a shit about other countries? Should should democratic countries that value human rights and some kind of form of free government and freedom, human rights, and that kind of thing, do we have an obligation to do something somewhere, some of the time, if it helps people? And I guess I don't know. I don't know enough about the Maduro. Like, is it a regime that is like? I know they've gone after political dissidents and blaming them all as CIA stooges or whatever, or CIA
Yeah,
operatives, which
yeah.
is very
There's
convenient for them.
probably with the Trump administration, there's probably a bunch of CIA operations going on currently.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, I don't, is Venezuela like truly a failed state? If we take him out, like by military force or even bribing him, are you going to create the conditions by which, if the head honcho leaves and gets a $200 million deal, is the next guy going to want to be like the next Maduro and get $200 million? And then, like,
Yeah, to go leave.
yeah, and then you have a keys of the kingdom type situation where you're going to have all the elites who could get it try to steal and kill each other and fight it out. But and would that make a failed state? So are we going from a borderline failed state to a de facto, obvious failed state? So I don't know. I think it's horrible. Like, I think the idea of like just propping up some other leader, like bringing in that woman who brought in a Nobel Peace Prize, like, I don't know if we have any evidence necessarily that if they just put her in power, like the Venezuelan people will be like, oh, yay, oh, we're so
Yeah.
happy now.
And democracy will be stable and there'll be
Yeah.
free and fair elections in 2 or 3 years or whatever.
But I mean,
Yeah.
at least like Venezuela has like huge oil reserves, and like they're gonna have to have American companies help them, and like not that like that
Yeah.
is a reason to do it, but like I think that validates the idea that like I think Venezuela could be a functioning country because at least they have the economy potentially to prop up a country. If we not take out the leadership, but if the leadership changes or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. It's like that weird thing. It's like
if the leadership's allowed to fly away with all the country's money.
yeah, with bags of like the gold
Bags
gold
of cash.
reserves.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would that be a win for Trump if he manages to get Maduro to walk away? I mean, like, isn't like kind of like rolling the dice on like a post Maduro world, I guess better than like the alternative right now that we're stuck with?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he would claim it to win. He would definitely say
Yeah.
this is his 15th
Right.
piece he's made.
Yeah. Let's see. Trump is massing a bunch of ships and nearby ships and planes off the coast of Venezuela. I just saw before doing this chat that they apparently like military U.S. jets spent like a significant amount of time flying over like Venezuelan airspace. So that's kind of interesting. It does seem like Trump really is just like threatening. There is the taco theme that Trump always chickens out. I don't think Trump really wants to start a war. I think I think a lot of MAGA people would be like, yeah, that's not a good thing to do for your MAGA base that wants, all the money to stay in America and to focus on Americans' problems. But Rubio is kind of definitely in on this. You have that Cuban anti kind of Latin American dictatorship view that, in the unique American political system that makes Florida and Miami area full of Cubans that hated Castro and Cuba and everything, it'll make them very happy. But, I think Maduro was trying to go to Cuba, but that's kind of like a no deal for all of these kind of neolib Cuban Republicans, and certainly
I don't
maybe
get
the
it. Like,
faction
he
that.
leaves Venezuela with $200 million. Like, who the fuck cares where he goes? Like, what is he gonna do? He's not gonna take
Well, he
over
would.
Cuba.
No, he's not going to take over, but that he would be able to, like, I guess, claim some kind of like moral crusade or something and just continue to fuck with American interests and foreign policy within Cuba. I guess
What?
Trump is very hawkish on Cuba anyway. Is Cuba next with this? Are we going to like try to mass a bunch of aircraft carriers and jets and stuff right off of Cuba and try to get that guy? What is it? Is it Fidel Castro's brother, or is he still alive? I don't even know who
I don't
rules.
know.
Cuba anymore. But are we just gonna, do the same thing? You guys all got to go to Russia or something and live there. You can take your cash.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh,
do you think it'll be some blowback from this though, like in the traditional sense? I do know, like Venezuela doesn't really have like a Muslim Brotherhood kind of like radical extremist group like wanting to take power, thankfully. So I guess there's that, and maybe the Venezuelan people are just over the kind of like Maduro dictatorship and would want maybe democracy, but
well,
I don't know.
I mean, they had democracy, right? Like Maduro runs elections, they just cheat them. So like that's a funny thing is like people say, "Oh, democracy is not that important." It's like why does every dictator pretend to have it then? It's
Well,
like
that's
none of
true.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
They go
Xi
through the
Jinping.
motions. They want to act like they all got 99% of the vote.
Yeah. Well, and it's so funny because like the State Department knows what's going on. There's people who are reporters and stuff, journalists in these countries. It's so funny. It's like I'm hearing stories of like Trump calling some dictator who won an election, like, "Oh, congrats on the election." And it's like, why? Like, don't you have State Department people telling you like that's not? I don't know. It's just funny.
Yeah, if we take all the oil and do a bunch of deals, I guess that could have the potential to like someday blow back on us, like what we did with Iran and nationalize, like overthrowing their democratically elected government and
Well,
instituting a dictatorship to subjugate all the oil and profit off of it.
the problem with a forceful American intervention for good is that every time we've done it, it's ended up poorly, right? But does that speak poorly about the effort and the intent, or
But
like
maybe
our
this time will
capability?
be different.
Yeah. Well, no, no, no. Like for example, like I don't know. It's all about execution, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I mean, to some extent, right? Like if there was a country that like we could easily just do something with minimal effort to take out a terrible government, like should we? Like, I don't know, like you could make an argument we shouldn't do it alone. Should we go to the UN, which is kind of a joke at this point, but like, should we get other countries in the region to support us, to help us to like, I don't know. I just think that like, I think there is some valid, I don't know, maybe this is the shill in me, but like America is a force for good, right? Like under certain governments, I think that's more true than others. And I think like just thinking that, oh, Iraq went poorly. So for never again are we ever going to do anything to any part of the world that's having dictators murder people. Like, oh, Iraq, Iraq, Iraq. Like how long keep doing that for?
Well, we did for decades with Vietnam, I guess, but yeah. I wanted to throw this out. Trump always claims that he inherited a mess. That's his new line on like everything with like cost of living being up, like all the problems that he's not solving. He just says, we inherited a mess. And I just wanted to shout that out that I'm so over that no one calls him on it because of the mess that like he left Biden with COVID and just all of the, mistrust and like the, shredded
Yeah, like a Pearl
alliances around the
Harbor of
world.
people dying every single day.
Yeah, but no one in the media calls Trump on that. That just Biden left him such a better country and economy and society than he was left personally. And at a certain point, we're almost a year into Trump's presidency. So how much longer will reporters like not push back on him saying that when you've been in power for a year and you haven't done anything, and all the trends of like cost of living, satisfaction, the tariffs, the strength in the economy, people's opinion and approval ratings of everything are just going in the wrong direction. I think Trump's got like super low approval ratings, somewhere like about like 36, 37%, which is very low for a president that's only a year into his second presidency when he just got
Well, if I could
reelected.
be fair for a second, and this is something I don't know if we've talked about this before, but just like the idea that the economy is not going to go back to where it was, right? Like when you think of like a restaurant with a menu, right? When inflation happens and they're going to increase everything on the menu by a quarter or
Hmm.
10%, whatever, they're not going to reduce it. So like to some extent,
Yeah.
you know, I feel it sucks for presidents who are judged on things as big as like a $30 trillion economy, like the American economy. But I think that's like the unfortunate thing, and most politicians cry about this, but like the idea that like the American people need to do things in their lives. It's not like the president can't force every company to stop making money hand over fist with the profits. Like I don't know, if they raise minimum wage, prices will go up. If they increase subsidies to people for this or tax credits, prices will go up, and it's just going to continue. And then if you have like 8% inflation and then supply chain crises, which is what Biden inherited from Trump because of COVID, right? So it's just like a clusterfuck where I don't know. I think that there's no easy solution, and like I think all these politicians regularly complain about things but don't do enough. And granted, to be fair, I don't know what like Trump could do. Like the House of Representatives isn't going to do anything, period. So, but Trump has that
Yeah.
sway. Like if they really wanted to solve this problem, they could be doing some things, but they probably won't. And it's not going to fix itself. Like that's the thing is like people say, oh, this golden age of the 1950s. Republicans love the 1950s. MAGA loves traditional families of the 1950s, which was when the government was intervening all over the economy to keep prices down for the average American. Or things were growing so fast that like people's standards of living and income were surpassing inflation in a positive way, which is a good thing. But like without government intervention, the person sitting in the White House doing nothing and the people in Congress doing nothing, nothing's going to fix itself. So I don't know. It's kind of funny. It's a weird political dilemma.
Yeah, but I mean, Trump really has done a lot of things, making things worse, tariffing products that can't be made here, like bananas and coffee, all of the tariffs that
They're
have like,
finally figured out and they're
yeah,
reducing now.
right. All of the infrastructure spending that he's kind of ruining by withholding funds, all of the manufacturing that was coming onshore that he's, ruining. And now, like, big car plants like Hyundai, right, or Kia, that, all of the workers got arrested despite being legally here to like build a factory here in the States. Like everything with the CHIPS Acts that he's defunding and ruining a lot of like battery factories and just in general manufacturing, can't make any deals or investments right now because the tariffs might go up 90% tomorrow, go down 10%, a month later, go up to 150%. If the leader of the country, the goods we need, starts feuding with Trump personally. But he's definitely making things like just a lot worse. Um, let's see. Here's an interesting news update. Australia banned social media for kids today. What do you make of that? Do you think that's a good thing?
Yeah,
Like, I think it's under
absolutely.
16. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like I don't know. People talk about, oh, I watched this on TikTok. I feel like a lot of people watch way too much social media, TikTok specifically. I think for children, it's way easier to just watch. When we were kids, kids can just do something for hours and hours and hours, whether that's like building a castle in the sand, or playing in a creek, or
Right.
playing video games, right? And the same thing for social media. So I think children. I think banning it for children is probably a good thing, especially since we know that social media companies are doing things maliciously or
Yeah.
what's maybe not maliciously but nefariously to hook children on social media so they're good little
Yeah.
meta good little
With like casino
Facebook cookies
style
for life. Yeah. Well,
psychology.
yeah, and sports gambling and stuff, like, yeah, I think it's pretty bad.
Yeah. Just want to shut that out. I do think that's something that's gonna, be a snowball kind of rolling downhill. I think more and more countries are going to get into that, and I think even in America, there's kind of a big push like that Jonathan Haidt book that made a lot of good press coverage about these kinds of issues.
Well, it's funny, like, I
Um,
think people always talk about, like, oh, children are so important. I'll do anything for my children. And it's like, well, you're ruining their lives with social media. You're against any program that benefits people, like working parents with small children. Like, a lot of this country don't believe that children should get free lunch. That's weird. And oh, by the way, we're saddling the next generations with $40 trillion of debt that they're probably not going to pay off until their great grandkids are alive, if
yeah,
ever,
right.
right? So I don't know. There's a lot of things. So it's nice that one country is taking the lead to fix one problem for young people, which seems
Yeah,
to be,
right.
yeah.
Ben Ulansky commented, malicious for sure. I wish I didn't have social media growing up. I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you wish, like, I guess we kind of grew up in the sweet spot where, you had like Facebook wasn't so predatory. You actually got like, you actually saw content from the people you followed and it wasn't just strangers. And we kind of like grew up with a kind of adolescent version of the internet. But now it just seems so much worse and all encompassing of all aspects of life. And it's almost like, people have remarked that it's like the opium den of the 21st century of just kids scrolling TikTok for 8 hours a day. But I don't know.
I mean, when
How
we're
much do
kids,
you
we
use
just
social
use,
media right now?
oh, almost none.
Yeah, I use it for the halfway post, but I don't do almost anything personally. I like never do any photos. I don't like Facebook. I don't like being on Facebook. I just post to very few people on my Facebook pages because Facebook changed the algorithm and it doesn't show this, the stuff that for the people you follow. It's like intuition has really set in, and so me personally, like it's so annoying that the timeline is just filled with stuff I don't care about, and especially on Facebook. And then they're kind of doing the same thing to Instagram as well. Let's pivot to the Supreme Court. I regret to inform everybody that the Supreme Court is on their partisan hack bullshit, but they are kind of really going ham on the unitary executive theory of Project 2025. And so the Supreme Court is more and more giving Trump like more responsibilities and power that like really belong to Congress. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court is going to hear a case pretty soon going on about like the agency heads and how much power the president has to just fire willy nilly all these agencies, and they will kind of interpret the law to make it like agencies don't have any of the authority that they have been acting on for the last like many decades, and the authority that Congress gave them and has kind of intended them to have and let them have for so long. But isn't that the kind of point of democracy, that we need more checkpoints on runaway like power abuses, like an executive taking more and more control over responsibilities that like the Constitution says he shouldn't have, things like war money, spending money, the tariffs, like trade policy. And then like meanwhile, Trump's the worst, least deserving president ever to get so much executive authority, rather. So I don't know. What do you make of that? Is it demoralizing to you, the idea that they could just, Trump could just start firing all the department agencies and, say
Well,
you have no right or responsibility to make sure the water doesn't poison us in the air, and companies don't just dump trash everywhere?
I mean, on the one hand, it's weird because, like, to some extent, they are right. I think a lot of federal agencies, when you really look at the law, and if it depends on how you want to read something, right? Like, it gets complicated when the first like sentence of like the Clean Water Act says like we believe Americans should be able to like bathe or go in any body of water, and it's like, well, what does that mean? And it's like, okay, so a lot of people imply that means like should you be able to drink it? Should you be able to like play in it and not get like some kind of like skin thing or rash or whatever? But I mean, to some
The
extent, like
three-headed fish from Simpsons,
yeah, I
the
mean,
Simpsons,
like
yeah.
no, so like environmental policy, right? Environmental policies and laws came from the 1970s. That's the laws are from like the 1960s and 1970s. In a couple cases, you have a couple amendments in the 90s and like nothing, right? So like everything that you do to protect the environment because it's like ethical, moral, good for your health, good for the country, good for wildlife, etc. And it's like everything that's done to regulate that. You could make an argument that because we're basing these off of like 50-year-old laws, they're probably unconstitutional, right? Congress passed a law that said you shouldn't dump shit directly into the water. And it's like, well, okay, logically, they've kind of extended that to further and further away from the body of water where the pollution's getting. But like, yeah, the Supreme Court's going to be like a little bitch about like, oh, that's not literally what the thing says. We have like a solution, which is Congress should do something. And I don't think necessarily that it's the Supreme Court's fault that Congress won't do anything, right? So like, for example, you like everyone says like, oh, the Clean Air Act didn't account for carbon because no one believed in climate change back then in the 90s, right? Or it wasn't the most important issue compared to the CFCs and the ozone layer disappearing completely, right? So like, what's the restitution? Congress should pass a law that says something about carbon, or have some, whether it's liberal, whether it's conservative, whether it's moderate solution to actually addressing a real problem. But I don't know. So to some extent, to sum that up, if Congress actually wanted to do something, the Supreme Court couldn't strike it down because they say, what is Congress's intention when they passed this bill 6 months ago? Well, clearly, when it says you can't do X, Y, and Z, they mean that. So I think there's a lot of like, most of the
Well,
regulatory state is like
go ahead.
basically gasping on fumes from 50 years ago. And if we're going to like be, nitpicky about what the original legislation actually said, well, yeah, people in the 1970s didn't know everything about all the problems that we're currently facing. And the fact that Congress has done nothing to make new laws is horrible, right? And, obviously the solution is everyone should email and mail letters and scream at their Congress members, but that's probably not going to happen. So it's like, what do you do when we have three branches of government. One's led by a crazy person. One is led by crazy people who love that
You are
crazy
afraid
person.
of the crazy person.
Yeah. And the third has no, i.e. Congress has zero interest in doing their job at all. So like, yeah, that's a fucked up situation. So
Yeah. Speaking of the interpretation of the rule, though, the Supreme Court also is going to look at birthright citizenship. And this is something that is like kind of a Rubicon moment because, if you're an originalist or what do they call it? A textualist, a strict textualist of the
yeah.
Constitution, the 14th Amendment begins, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the U.S. and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any laws which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the U.S., nor shall any state deprive any person life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So right there, if you're like an originalist or a textualist, like it's blatant that if you're born here, you're a citizen of the U.S. And there's a lot of things in there, like protecting life, liberty, and property, and due process of law, and equal jurisdiction of equal protection of the laws. Like all of that is not really applying, as ICE is just profiling people based on skin color and then arresting like legal U.S. citizens, detaining them for like hours or even days sometimes. So, what do you think? Do you have any predictions on that? You think Republicans are going to find some weird, stupid, like horrendous loophole to get around what is like basically like straight up what the 14th Amendment says? Like if you're born here, you have citizenship. Like, and like why is this even going to the Supreme Court? Like why is the first judge that ruled against it why does that not just stand of just like point to the 14th Amendment in the Constitution, right? Like how is this even going to an appeals court and then an appeal and then going up to the Supreme Court when it's like you like a first grader could read the Constitution and like in the first sentence of the 14th Amendment say, yeah, everything these people are arguing in court is just completely wrong and made up, and like again point at the 14th Amendment,
Yeah, no, that'll be really weird. It'll be a different country when the Supreme Court, doesn't get by some loophole of like, well, the EPA believes this, and we're not sure what Congress meant 50 years. If they can point to something literally written in the Constitution that like all lawyers understand
Yeah,
what it means, and it's like there's no ambiguity. If they just cut that down, it'll be interesting. It'll be a different country we live in when it turns out
yeah,
that the Constitution is not the end all be all. It's a random people's interpretation, or some, I guess, in sometimes, or in this example, would be like just a partisan reading, right? What does
right.
it allow a Democrat to do if you read the Constitution with a little bit of a partisan, kind of bent?
Yeah,
I don't know.
right.
But hey, my phone's about to die, so just
Oh,
FYI.
do you have a charger? You can
Let me get a
charge it real quick.
charger. Yeah.
Okay. Well, good preparation and planning. Let's see. I wanted to bring up. Can you hear me still at all? I can still
Yeah, I can
talk.
hear you.
Okay. Yeah. Mike Johnson claims that this Congress is one of the most productive Congresses ever, which is an insane claim to make when you have the longest shutdown in U.S. history with a GOP trifecta, which is pretty insane. Meanwhile, more congressional members of the House are rumoring that they're going to leave and retire early. So there's like, some reports that there's up to 20 House members who might resign. And I guess presumably they'll do this in some order that doesn't mean that Democrats take the majority of the House, right? Like there'll be enough special elections to take an amount of time. So, I mean, that might be interesting next year. It might be like just a trickle all of 2026 leading up to the midterms of just like every 2 or 3 weeks, like another House member resigning. And, that's kind of
Do you think they'll
bullshit too, because like,
resign, or like just say they're not gonna
no, I
run
think
again?
I think resign. I think they all want to get out, and they're like, there's a lot of incumbents that aren't going to run again because they're all complaining that Mike Johnson doesn't listen to anybody, and obviously Mike Johnson's got an impossible job because you're like you said, Trump's a literal crazy person. So you're basically legislating on the whims of a crazy person who also doesn't care about anything and doesn't like give them a kind of lodestar to follow in terms of policy that Congress can set or laws that they can write. But I just find that so funny that Mike Johnson can say that with a straight face and one of the most productive Congresses ever. I looked it up. I think there's like Trump has signed like 46 or something laws, where at this point in the Biden presidency, he had signed like
Hmm.
76 laws. Um, I don't know if you want to do that with your camera. And then here's another thing from the Supreme Court. So, redistricting, they voted on a very partisan basis that Texas's gerrymandered maps, which are blatantly racially designed, that can go through. However, Indiana is kind of still stalling. I guess there's a push maybe now that they can still get one more House seat, but Mike Pence, of all people, is lobbying against it. Props to Mike Pence for, continuing to kind of push a little bit of sanity on the Republican Party.
Hmm.
Um, That'd be fun. Do you think Mike Pence might try to run for president again? Do you think? Do you
With
think he's
what
got it in him?
constituency?
Yeah. Well, exactly.
His extended
Um,
family in Indiana.
yeah.
Who supports Mike Pence in 2029? I don't know.
That's a very good question. It would be interesting to see. I mean, I welcome him going to the primaries and trying to argue reality and maybe have some kind of wedge effect on Republican hearts and minds in the primary. Um,
Well,
but
the problem is
let's see,
anytime
Missouri.
Republicans have a primary with a bunch of normal people, they're all wedging for the crazy guy, which is how we
Yeah,
got
and
Trump in the first place.
yeah, that's
That's
true.
literally how we won a plurality in 2015 or whatever. So,
Well, it's funny, we've talked about this before, but with the gerrymandering, they're basically watering down Republican districts, which means that it'll be in a blue wave situation if that materializes, like relatively safe Republican seats that get gerrymandered to be less safe, but to maximize the total number of seats Republicans theoretically could win. Like it could have like just a totally wipeout event for Republicans. But you know, it's always good for Democrats when you get these Republicans who are incumbents stepping down and not running again. You know, the incumbency rate is just still so high. So anytime
mhm.
you open it up for a Republican primary, you know, you're giving all of those Republican primary voters who are maybe the most kind of politically deranged to keep nominating really deranged candidates. And so there's a big thing in the Senate. Democrats have kept so many seats because Republicans are kind of incapable of nominating a relatively normal, sane person. Um,
Yeah, which is funny because like if the number of people who end up resigning ends up being more than four, it's like congrats, you could have fixed every problem you hate in Congress yourself, but instead you guys all left.
what, by giving the majority to Democrats or something?
Yeah, like you don't even have to give it to Democrats. You just threaten Johnson. Like I don't get these people.
Yeah.
Like, aren't there 10 Republicans who can go to Mike Johnson and say, "We don't believe you're the speaker anymore. You're an XYZ expletive, negative thing. And if you don't do and let us do what we want, we're gonna switch sides." Like the amount of power when it's such a razor thin majority, like the people who hate the job and want to leave or are planning to leave or already leave, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, like they could obviously take over the entire house themselves if they wanted to. But I don't know why they don't understand that. Like
That's
if
a
you think
great
of
idea. That's very true. I mean, they could get, if they're so upset about things, it takes so few Republicans to band together and literally hold it hostage and force Mike Johnson to do whatever they want. Or they can, I think Republicans that have a little bit of team loyalty, they know that there's probably, I don't think, do you think the Republican House could even nominate another speaker? Like it took so long to
probably
get
not.
Mike Johnson and he was such like a wild card, black horse, like dark horse candidate just because the other three, I think was Tom Emmer, Mike Jordan, and one Steve Scalise, that none of them could get a majority. So they just all picked somebody no one fucking knew, Mike Johnson. I had a tweet, by the way, today. It was like, breaking news, Mike Johnson's starting to worry God doesn't have big plans for speakership. I think that's funny. He had that claim that he kind of saw himself as like a Noah-like figure, a little bit of delusions of grandeur, perhaps.
It's kind of weird when you throw in like something like biblical like that or your personal belief in God and like what God's mission or plan for you is. Cause it, like, I don't know. If you don't do anything and you were Speaker of the House for 2 years and you didn't do one thing that you can point to and be proud of, like what does that say? Like, was it really divinely interviewed? Like, did God, is that part of the plan to make you just like a little lackey bitch who doesn't do anything? Like, imagine it in any other context. Like, if you believe that like God made you, I don't know, like president or something, like, and you're just like, I'm not going to do anything. Like, I don't know how that like meshes with your belief. I don't know. It's a weird thought.
Well, it's the thing that God helps those who help themselves. And, maybe Mike Johnson's just leaning too heavily on God during divine intervention or something. But it would be great. I would love it if they kicked him out as speaker. And then, it'd just be great for this Congress to one, have the longest shutdown and then have another speaker fight. It would be nice,
And the fewest bills passed ever.
yeah. Let's
What I
see.
find
What
is
else?
I find it so
Yeah, go
weird
ahead.
because there's so many Republicans. Like I get it that like you're a pro-Republican, you like Trump, or at least you publicly say that. Like, but isn't there like something that like the the median Republican, like isn't there some issue they care about that they could get Democrats to go in with them on? And then couldn't they have like, 50 Republicans and like 30 Democrats go to Johnson and say we want to put this on the floor? And
Well,
like,
the Epstein files, that was the only thing. And they got
yeah,
four before the dam broke, and then everyone votes almost unanimously.
yeah, I mean, it's just weird. Like, there's got to be people in Congress who want to do something, and like, not every bill that every member of Congress is articles of impeachment against the other person, president or whatever. And it's like, I don't know. Like there's not like some pet issue of some member of Congress who cares about like pollution on this thing or this unfair trading practice or gives a shit about this regulation they want to
Yeah,
amend.
but I think the problem is just that, the speakers like of both parties have really been taking over so much power and authority over the legislative process. And like that was the big thing with Republicans that they want to have like, business as usual as they consider it with like real committee processes. But it's just when you have Trump and like I guess Republicans don't have any plans. Like it's like healthcare right now. All this time, like they're letting these Obamacare subsidies lapse, and they have nothing to help people. Trump wants to like just give out the subsidies, like the equivalent of money, as like cash to people to go buy their own health insurance. But it's like, what health insurance are they going to buy if no one's propping up those like public Obamacare, plans, right? So it's like, what policies do they have? They literally have no agenda. I don't think they have pet issues. They already did the tax cuts for the rich. That's the only thing they ever really, give a shit about.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's a good point. Like, I guess maybe I'm assuming that 80% of the Republican caucus want to do anything, period. Like, maybe,
Yeah, but
like,
it goes back to, we've been talking about this a lot. It's just like they don't have any courage. They don't have any sense of their legacy. They don't
well,
have,
that's true.
it used to be like, senators and representatives would want to have all these big bills. Like, I mean, I would have to
Have stuff
imagine
named
there's
after them. Yeah.
Yeah, there's probably like all kinds of MAGA Republicans that get elected just saying that they are more Trump than all the other people. And so they don't have any policies. They're not like a lot of them aren't even lawyers. They don't know how the law works. And a lot of them are, nowadays they're barely voting on anything. So it's not even like there's that many bills for them to even like, do debate on, offer amendments for. And then everything is so tightly fisted by the speakership because, everything is so partisan. And, with Trump obviously being another wild card where he doesn't get involved at all. Like Trump himself is not interested in policy and definitely doesn't get into the weeds and doesn't appear to really read anything. Like everyone who says he's such a hard worker, like they usually just say that he's like calling people late at night. It's like probably calling people, like, hey, what do you got for me on crypto? Like, hey, donate to the East Wing and I'll help you get to power in Venezuela or something. Like who the fuck, who
Or
knows who
not
he's
get
even talking
overseen
to?
by the FTC or FCC.
Right. And then on top of it, Trump does things like just a couple of days ago, he tweeted out 160 times between 7 p.m. and midnight. And, it's not like on policies. It's not, he's just like retweeting random people, which by itself is kind of like a weird thing, like the president retweeting like 160 times. So imagine all of those people that he retweeted. Like, let's say that was 100 people. Maybe he duplicated like a lot. And actually, it was reported that a lot of the tweets were actually literally things he had already retweeted earlier in the night, which is really weird. But like, imagine how many people he retweeted, not vetting that account, probably not, it's like, Desert Hitler Eagle 44, like 1488 or whatever. And it's like the president is retweeting them. It's like, is that good that the president's just retweeting people that he has no clue who they are or what they stand for or like everything else they've done? They just did like an AI photo of Trump with like big muscles or something. And now he's like retweeting, like, it's just insane. Uh, Here, let's talk about
Yeah.
something else insane here. There's a lot of rumors that Trump's going to fire a bunch of his cabinet members after the midterms. Apparently, he's pretty pissed with Kristi Noem because of all of her dumb, like, little photo ops that she does. And even Tom Holman and like Stephen Miller are sick of Kristi Noem and not being helpful. And then there's the whole thing of her like boyfriend slash side piece, Corey Lewandowski, who is like kind of like shadow secretary of the Homeland Security, whatever Kristi Noem is, like Corey Lewandowski is like a human red flag walking around, but he's like doing everything and helping making decisions and like boxing out like real administration people. On top of that, Pete Hegseth obviously seems like he's probably on borrowed time, if not like going to be like, going through like a war crime tribunal or something. RFK Jr. is kind of
No,
dismantling
remember,
public
he didn't
health.
have anything to do with it. He had another meeting.
Yeah,
After the first
right.
strike, he had to leave.
Yeah, yeah. But what do you think about that? I mean, especially if Democrats win big in the midterms, like, don't you think Trump will probably just clean house just to change like the trajectory, like get these toxic people that the voters are clearly like reacting harshly against? What do you make of all that?
Yeah, I think it's funny. I think it'd be better suited to fire him before. Like he should fire him now, let it settle. Like the American people are a little
Yeah,
myopic.
before
Like,
the midterms.
yeah, I mean it's December of the year before a midterm. No one's going to be voting against
Right.
or for Republicans because they fired Kristi Noem in December the
Yeah.
year before. And like, yeah, so I think it's funny. I mean, it's funny because like there's so many people who are incompetent and incompetently doing their jobs and incompetently having bad press and bad media attention, and everything they do is just stepping on a rake with hitting right in the square of the nuts of
Yeah.
the administration right now, metaphorically. And it's just like, I don't know. It's really funny. I think that'd be my political advice: is fire them right now and just put in people who are competent and make your administration look more competent going into the midterms, as opposed to keeping these people. Well, it'll be funny
Yeah.
because like if they know they're on their way out and they're going to be doing everything they can to brown nose, it's just going to be even more embarrassing for the administration, I feel.
Yeah, that's true. It'll be embarrassing though to have all of those, to waste all that. It would be funny to waste all that time having more confirmation hearings for people who like couldn't last a year in the job.
Well, and people will
Um,
be leaking, I'm sure, and then people will be leaking
mhm,
stuff about other people to try to get the ire of
to get the
Trump and
job.
other.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be funny.
Yeah. Do you think Trump will learn his lesson and maybe interview people a little longer or maybe stray from the Fox News weekend lineup, for a
No, I
lot of
always
these
wonder about
jobs?
that. Like, that's like the funny thing is, I don't think people appreciate that enough, and or think about it. Like the fact that, like, let's say you win, let's say you, like today, won a November presidential election, and you're gonna be president. Like, okay, who are you gonna put in Department of Labor? It's like, who the fuck do I know? Like, I feel like to some extent, I feel like a lot of political parties just have like lists of people who are good enough or good or think they could be in it, and it's like, I don't know how many of the 4,000 plus people who have to be like approved by the Senate or whatever in a new administration. Like, I don't know. I don't think the president's really meeting all those people, and they're probably not certainly sitting down with them for very long or able to ask them what you want to
Well,
do.
no, but on the other hand, do you think the Republican Party's official list had like Pete Hegseth, in the top five for that, or that was like a purely Trump choice? Do you think anybody was recommending Stephen Miller, or that's just Trump?
Oh, well, I mean, they
Christine
bring people in with them for sure, but like, let's say like, oh, you need a diplomat for Mauritius. Who are you gonna pick? Like, I don't fucking know. Like, you got to put someone there, right? And so someone comes up with a list of names, and then you have
and donors.
yeah, well, donors, and that's unfortunate for like diplomat positions and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. It's strange. Like right now, if they were all to like, let's just say hypothetically, all those people resigned, would they know who readily to put in place for all those agencies? Like if they
Might take a
hired,
while.
yeah, I don't know.
Cash Patel might be on his way out, although Cash Patel's got like a 10-year, I think, is it a 10-year term, right, for FBI directors? It'd be funny to see him out after a year. He's getting into trouble, wasting a lot of taxpayer money, like driving driving his girlfriend and her 20-something friends home from, partying out at the bars or something, clubs.
But I think it's funny,
Um,
like you have FBI agents who've probably been in for years, like doing important stuff, and now they're just like ferrying drunk people
Chauffeurs.
home. Like
Yeah.
that's pretty weird. I wouldn't want to do that, but no, oh yeah.
Let's see. So Pete Hegseth, what do you make of him? He's definitely kind of making a lot of excuses now that are contradictory and paradoxical. So, like, his excuses are going into more excuses. And then, it's the typical Trump playbook of it didn't happen. Okay, maybe it happened, but it was legal. Okay, I wanted it. I approved it, but I didn't stay for the second strike. He's throwing Admiral Mitch Bradley under the bus. Um, do you think that? Um, do you think that is like really demoralizing for the military? Do you think ho- I guess I'm kind of rambling, but I had this thought that the Senate really kind of fucked Trump over by not doing the advice and consent, right? Like if we had a really functioning Senate, wouldn't they not approve Pete Hegseth or Kash Patel? Like Kash Patel just looks like a little boy in every press conference he's in. He's like
Little
wide-eyed and
boy.
like looks like visibly scared, like to talk to people or to, he gets up and starts saying, we're going to do everything to find this guy. And then the cop comes up after him. He's like, yeah, we already have the suspect in custody. So like Kash Patel is like really not competent at the job. And I don't know. It's just, I don't even know what to say. You point out like these things that are just so dumb about the Trump administration. And like, what can
Well,
you
I
do
mean,
other than just shrug that no one does anything about it? Like no one serious or professional says no or
yeah.
stops it.
I mean, that's like the whole point of having adults in the room, right? And that's kind of what's helped Trump a little bit in the first term, at least, especially early on, being surrounded by people who would tell him, like, no, you shouldn't do that. That'll probably hurt you in the long run. And listening to that, like, not only does the Senate, by approving people like Hegseth and, making them constitutional officers in the federal government, but like, it doesn't do them any good. They voted for him. Makes them look like idiots, right? That they would do
Yeah.
that. It makes Trump look bad because the guy is obviously doing stuff that regularly embarrasses the federal government. And not just
Yeah.
him, right? Like a lot of people. There's a lot of people in the administration they picked who shouldn't have those jobs, except for the fact that they're super supportive of Trump, which seemed to be like one of the main things that would get you a job to begin with. But it's also like the fact that the members of the Senate, they're really inflicting these people on 340 million people. Like, talk about
Right.
decisions that shouldn't be taken so cavalierly. Like, imagine you're in a position where, like, you have someone like, let's say Robert Kennedy Jr., who's like going to be taking stuff off of the vaccine list for stupid reasons. Like, it's one thing if you say, I think this one ingredient in vaccines is actually bad. Let's do a study and investigation and maybe remove but like the idea that all vaccines are bad is like patently stupid, and the members of the Senate know that. But then also, like, not only are they hurting Trump, hurting the Republican brand, hurting the Republican Party, hurting the Republican Senate, they're also hurting 340 million people who live in this country. So, like, shame on them for taking the easy way out on that one
Yeah.
particular day and not standing up for and making it a little hard, like for the elected leaders who are governing this country. I mean, think about that. Imagine having a decision that you're going to like meaningfully make 340 million people's lives worse. And the fact of like, well, I don't want to be tweeted at today, and I didn't really see that. Maybe I hope he'll do
Right.
good. It's like taking these people who are not qualified for the job, and be like, well, I hope once they get in there, they'll feel like the responsibility that the American people have put on them. It's like, no,
And they
fuck you.
won't do
Like,
all the things they've been saying they're going to do for months, you know?
yeah, exactly. So yeah, shame on them.
Yeah, shame. I wanted to bring this up. You had a funny bit that we were texting about. You were talking about if aliens were real, and like you get those like Joe Rogan guests that talk about how like they've personally seen the alien craft and they've like seen the bodies of like aliens that we've recovered. But you had a good point that like if that was really true and like we had evidence of this, like why would Russia and China be acting the way they are? Or like you want to expound on that? I thought it was kind of interesting what we were talking about.
No, yeah, I just think it's funny. Like people, and like these people make documentaries and they're talking to people. This one was talking. He said he interviewed Marco Rubio like once or twice or something, and like I should watch a documentary because I love that kind of stuff. But it's like, okay, so like Marco Rubio genuinely like believes like there's aliens, and like the like these people have said like they've seen all this like evidence of like materials from outer space, not from this world or something. And it's like, oh, the government's not telling us, and it's like no one in the government acts like they know aliens are real. Like the stupid shit that people get all up in
Yeah.
arms about, at least to me, like I would think if I was president and like I knew for a fact alien spaceships were real and we had a bunch and that like we don't know if they'll come back or like what like raving till 4 a.m. about DEI and woke people. Like, is that how you're going to spend your
Yeah.
time? And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, they're like people say, oh, like Italy had a spacecraft, like Russia's got these programs, China does, and it's like if you're worried about like space aliens, like why are you having hundreds of thousands of your own people get maimed in Ukraine for some territory that you've put millions of mines on? So you're gonna take this land and
Right.
blow your own people up trying to like use the land. And it's like, oh, all the way, yeah, aliens are real. So I think the entire premise that aliens are real is probably not true just based on the people who supposedly would know don't act like it. That gets into the
Yeah.
conspiracy theory where
Right.
they're just like hiding it all from the government because you can't trust politicians, which I guess is kind of a fair argument. But
Maybe a valid point. Yeah.
yeah,
But I've heard some compelling arguments that like space travel from any kind of biological entity is just impossible. Like the span is just so great. And I don't know. I guess if there's like multi-dimensional beings or there's some technology that can like transcend the laws of physics as we currently know them, I guess that's a possibility. But at that point, if they're like interdimensional beings, it's like, what are we going to do with that information? I guess I don't know. But that's a good point. It's like, yeah, yeah. Would they be telling Trump, or would Trump, like, if Trump knew it, don't you think he would be hinting at it at some point for like just to impress some brando at Mar-a-Lago for like one night or something? Um, Let's see. I wanted to shout out Mamdani real quick. His plan to
okay.
have like 5 government run grocery stores. I just find that funny that Republicans like shit on that so hard that they're like in food deserts looking to help poor people with like 5 like charter grocery stores that will maybe get a little bit of government efforts or funding to help make happen. But then meanwhile, Trump is like taking 10% of Intel, and now he's like taking 25% cuts of these computer chips that like he's sending to China. And then you look at the farmer bailout, and it's just so fucking annoying that Republicans constantly complain about the money that might go to help poor people. And now because of Trump's tariffs, we're giving like $12 billion straight to farmers because he fucked them over by ruining their entire export markets and just essentially ruining, their way of life. And then you look at, of course, where the money's going, and it's going to the big farms, not the small farmers, and just more and more family farmers that are kind of like the trademark Republican, campaign ad constituency. Like they're all getting fucked.
Well, I think it's funny because, like, on the one hand, I mean, to some extent, it's good politics, right? A lot of people are having problems paying bills, rent's too high, grocery prices are going up. So, and on the one hand, like, even though I think you can make a pretty good argument that like the economics of having like five government sponsored, subsidized, whatever grocery stores probably not going to radically fix a lot of problems in New York City. I mean, it's obviously something that's good that shows that like you're trying and that you do care about people. And like the politics is good because it's not like you're not going to solve inflation problems in New York City with these grocery stores, but at least you're showing people that you're responsive and that you care and you're willing to try
Yeah.
something, which is kind of like the FDR playbook, right? Like no one knew how to get out of the Great Depression. Some people thought we'd never get out of it. And he was like, you know what? We're just going to pay people to go build parks. And like, maybe that won't help, but at least it shows we're doing something. And it's funny, like on the one hand, it's kind of immature for people to like be telling people who are trying to make a difference, like, fuck you, you're suck, you're never gonna, that's stupid. Like, it's like, imagine
Yeah.
like a kid's like, I'm gonna start my own little library in my front yard. Like, shut up, you're stupid. You know what I mean? It's like stupid for people to act that way. And like, yeah, I don't know. I think that more government, more places around the country should do stuff like that, that meaningfully make a difference in people's lives. I mean, it shows like the cynicism of especially like federal politics, which is funny because New York City is a city. So why do all these Republicans who are federal elected officials or whatever in Congress or whatever, or the White House have all these strong opinions on something that New York City is doing? I think that's like the libertarian. I'm a very states' rights, like libertarian type thing of like let cities and states do whatever they want. Probably a lot of there's a little bit of a tangent, but like I was reading this article. It was making fun of mayors, and they were saying that like most governors, members of Congress, for the most part, are pretty rational people. They may act crazy in front of cameras, but they're like not like normally stupid. And they're saying that because like a lot of towns, like a lot of have like kind of political machines where you just have to know a couple of the right people and you can become mayor. And they're
Right.
saying that like mayor is like the most important job in American politics where you can like readily and reliably have like actual nitwits and become mayor
Yeah.
because it's like, oh, well, like, you're friends with like the richest guy in the county who's like a used car salesman. So you got a shit ton of money and you became mayor. Or, it's little
Yeah.
stuff like that, right? And
And
it's
that
like,
guy's
well,
got a lot
like,
of sway on the Chamber of Commerce
yeah,
that can get
exactly.
you into all the events and fundraising things. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like the idea that like Republicans are like, oh, we're gonna make Mamdani the face of the Democratic Party, and it's like way to take someone who's at least trying to help people and demonize him and say, oh, look at these weak Democrats trying to do stuff, what losers. And it's like I think it's
Trying
gonna
to help poor
backfire.
people.
Like it's funny. It's like the bad politics of picking bad people for jobs that are important to lots of people, and then bad politics of criticizing genuinely popular people who are trying to make a difference. I don't
Right.
know.
Well, they always do that. I think Obama's heart was in the right place when he's trying to give them healthcare,
Yeah.
some kind of public related option of healthcare, and everyone shits on it and tries to make it fail because God forbid a Democrat be successful in helping a bunch of people that have like pre-existing conditions or, kids that are in college and, can't afford their own insurance, but they can be on their parents' plan thanks to Obama. So, yeah, it would be nice. Yeah, it kind of goes back to the idea that Republicans just don't really have any agenda. They don't really have any solutions to help people. That's why even despite having a trifecta in the government right now in both chambers of Congress, they have no agenda whatsoever. So,
Well, part of it shows too, just like with the diversity of the people they hired to staff the government. Like you have so many random people from different things. They have some Democrats, right? And so like it
yeah,
kind of shows that it's like it's such a grab bag of random shit that it's not like politically coherent as I think most people would traditionally understand, like for the Republican Party at large. So that part's a little strange. And then it makes sense that like they're not doing anything anyway because like what like um I think you can make a fair case that, like we were talking earlier, Trump isn't like super involved in the day to day like technical things. You can kind of tell by the way he speaks sometimes. It kind of like belays the fact that he doesn't really know. Like if everything you
Yeah,
say about every topic is, oh, it's really interesting. There's interesting things going on, or this is the
yeah,
greatest thing that's ever. And it's like he talks in a way that like does not seem to be it's like the aliens thing, right? Like some of these people talk in ways that I don't think belay the fact that they really know what's going on. And so that kind of shows. So they have no agenda because they don't know what's going on. They don't know how to run the things they're doing. They have random people assigned to random posts, and they're all fighting for each other, fighting for each other's attention for Trump or whatever, and fighting each other for like
hmm
time on social media and like blogs and not blogs, but podcasts and stuff for like far right influencers. So it's like you have all these people who are just in it for themselves, trying to make money, and they have no agenda because they don't like that's not their why they're there to begin with. That's a
yeah.
long rambling thing, but I mean, it makes sense why nothing is getting done in some ways, I guess.
No, that's very true. That's all I got for my outline for this. Do you have any last thoughts or anything you've read recently? What are you reading for fun right now?
I'm reading a couple
Or
books
do
right
do
now.
you
I'm
read for
reading a book,
fun?
Bill Bryson's book about the history of the English language, which is really
No,
interesting.
is that cool?
And yeah, it's really good. It's talking about how complicated English is, but in some ways it's actually useful because like English is like one of the few languages where we just take words with abandon from every other culture. One interesting
Yeah.
fact, and this is kind of just this is really just like a little tidbit, a little fact, but he said that even though so many people in early America in the 1700s were Germans and stuff, and so much so that when they were writing the Constitution, they thought that they were going to make German the second national language of America or whatever, or have all government documents be in German because that's how many Germans
Oh, that's
lived here.
cool.
They
Yeah.
said even despite that, it's a weird fact that there are more words in English from almost every other language but German. Like even though German and in English is a Germanic language, we have the
Yeah.
fewest amount of English words come from German origin compared to almost
Did
every other language.
did they explain why or anything?
No, I mean it's like a mystery why so little German was adopted in any form or fashion in modern American English, which is interesting. But
That is kind of an interesting thought. Yeah.
yeah, and then I'm just
Yeah.
I'm always reading like three books at once. But I'm reading a book about like it's talking about the all of the government policies for soldiers and stuff following World War II. So what they were doing like before the war ended, as they had started in Guadalcanal in 1942, right? The tens of thousands of wounded Americans coming home and what they were doing for them. And then just the problems that they had with like alcoholism and stuff and trouble finding jobs. And, obviously
Yeah.
the massive amounts of PTSD because it was compared to other American wars, pretty brutal.
Yeah. That's kind of interesting. Why read books like this? What is it? Just interest? Are you like recording notes or anything? Do you find it? Are you practically applying any of this that you're reading?
No, I mean, I just found it
Just for fun?
interesting. I've got a couple. I read a lot of random books. Like I have a book next to my Katie and I went to like Barnes and Noble and I just like went ham and bought like five books, but they just looked interesting. It's like I'm going to read soon a book on the history of the city of Alexandria from like its
Oh, really?
creation and then all the world history that went through that city, obviously following the next 2,300 years or whatever. But what about you? What are you
That's
reading?
cool. I just went to the library. They have like monthly or weekly book sales, and so they have like a bunch of art books. So I got one on the art movement of like the Vienna kind of Renaissance in the early 1900s, late 1890s. So like Gustav Klimt and Egon Schiele, and a lot of those painters and architects and stuff like that. So that's pretty interesting. It's like a very Art Nouveau related kind of Renaissance and artistic movements there. And then I'm reading Raymond Carver's short stories that are kind of interesting, kind of bleak from like like a lot of characters and story plot lines from like the 70s and 80s. And so that's kind of interesting. He's a famous short story writer. And so like a lot of short story writers today kind of like imitate his style in many ways, very kind of like postmodern realism kind of thing. But that's kind of interesting. Um, but what else am I reading? I've been watching Babylon Berlin a lot. Have you seen that show?
Mm-mm.
And yeah, feel free, anybody in the comments. I love Babylon Berlin. I recommend it. I'm interested if anybody else watches it, but it takes place in like 1920s, like Weimar Germany, and it's like it's like following a police department kind of as they go through all these shady conspiracies, and in the background there's like Nazi characters and stuff like that, and that becomes a bigger part of the plot as the series goes on. But that's interesting. It's all in German. It's the like most popular show in Germany, and I think it's like got the biggest budget of any show in German history, and it's like all period, from 1920s, and so that's really interesting.
Hmm.
Been watching that. But yeah, any last thoughts? Any comments? We've been talking for about an hour and a half.
No, I don't
Thanks
know.
for all the
That was
hearts, everybody. A lot of hearts going on right now.
shout out for reading,
All
I
right.
guess.
Yeah, shout out to literacy. All right, thanks for listening, everybody, to Brain Milk. Let me shout out real quick. I got a lot of books that I have written, including satire in the Trump years. I've compiled 4 years of Trump comedy, and then I have a satire in the Biden years. If you go to Amazon, I have the books there you can buy. Look up Dash McIntyre, satire in the Trump years, satire in the Biden years. And then I took my favorite articles about Trump from both of those and made this book called Trump Comedy, which I really like the cover, Trump on Fire, kind of burning, little hell and brimstone. I guess it's reversed probably. Yeah. But on the back, it says Donald Trump will sue you if you read this book. It's a risk you might have to take to buy my book and read it and carry it around. Donald Trump might sue you for reading it. I like to think I'm one of the most prolific Trump satirists on the internet. But thanks for subscribing to the Halfway Cafe. Thanks for watching us. You can subscribe and become a paid subscriber for only $2.50. I think that's a fair price. So if you really like what we do with the Halfway Post, Halfway Cafe, this Brain Milk podcast, subscribe, only $2.50. Thanks for listening, everybody, and have a great rest of your week. Good to talk to you, Adrian.
Yep. See ya.
Cheers. See you, everybody.